But Joe Rogan would be like, it's an open discussion. You know, we're just floating ideas. We're not married to them being facts or not facts, and they don't have to be experts. We're having a talk. We're just having a talk. I'm smoking a cigar. Sometimes I smoke weed. We're just talking. That's Joe Rogan's series. And it's great for everything, except for facts. It's great for everything, except for people that are disparaging week after week, podcast after podcast, and not telling the truth and the reality of what has happened October 7th and beyond. So you bring on one scumbag after the next scumbag. And they say, well, I'm not an expert. I'm a comedian. I'm not an expert, but I know this. I'm not an expert on Hitler, but I'm not an expert on Churchill, but I'm not an expert on the conflict in the Middle East, but here's all of my thoughts. I'm a comedian, but we're not going to do any jokes. We're not going to talk comedy. I'm just going to expound on all my thoughts. Joe Rogan will have all these people come on and talk about history, Israel, Jews, genocide, and Hamas. But if I came on Joe Rogan, I was like, Joe, you know, I'm an MMA fan. I've never been in a ring. He would say, have you ever, you know, like worked out MMA? No. But do I have to do it to be an expert? Do I have to actually spar MMA? Can't I just... It's my opinion. I've talked to some fighters, and my brother and I, we used to pillow fight. Joe, my brother would use the heavy pillow, and when he hit me with that heavy pillow a couple times, it hurt. So I know what it's like to get hit in the head. Not like by John Jones, but I know what it's like to get hit in the head. But Joe, listen, you know, I'm thinking, because my brother, after we would have pillow fights, sometimes we would do the choke out game where I would let him choke me to sleep. And then he'd wake me up and I'd laugh and I'd be like, oh my God, that was so crazy. And then afterwards we'd continue fighting or wrestling or doing what we do. I think Joe Rogan, when these fighters get choked out, tap them awake, give them a standing 8 count. If they want to keep fighting, let them keep fighting. Wouldn't that be so exciting, Joe? Wouldn't the crowd go crazy if one fighter gets choked out, you give them a standing 8 count, then they come back and win? Joe Rogan would be like, what the f*** are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about. Have you ever been choked out? No. Have you ever been in a UFC cage? No. It's just my thoughts. It's my ideas. It's my opinion. Joe Rogan would be like, what the He wouldn't, the conversation would be over. If somebody came on Joe Rogan podcast and started talking about, well, you know, the second show on a Friday night, it's not that bad. I don't know why comics, Steve Martin, publicly wrote in his book, I don't know why you guys always complain about the second show Friday night. Have you ever been on stage second show Friday night? No. But have you ever done comedy? No. But he wouldn't entertain that. Churchill, World War II, Jews, Gaza, genocide, anything goes on Joe Rogan. It's irresponsible. You wouldn't have these sort of floating conversations or ideas about MMA because you're an expert on it. You know it. You live it. You created it. You've done it. Stand-up comedy, same. You wouldn't let people come in there and tell you about how a joke this and what it's like performing on the road versus different between performing in a theater, which is different from performing in an arena. You wouldn't let anybody have a conversation about it unless they've done it. You got these people on there, this Dave Smith, Douglas Murray, ask him, when was the last time you've been to Israel? I've never been. If you've never been, I can't talk about it? Yeah, you could talk about it. But why don't you go, Dave Smith? Joe Rogan, you have all these people come on and talk. Why don't you go? You're Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan and Janine. The Joe Rogan podcast live from Judea, Samaria. Interview some of these terrorists. Interview some of the widows of IDF soldiers. Interview some of the hostages who've gotten out of Gaza. Talk to them, Joe Rogan, instead of talking to Dave Smith and the rest of these dumb.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to need someone to comment down below and let me know what point this moron was trying to make, guys. I don't understand what the hell he was saying. Maybe I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's a New York thing. I don't know what this dude was saying. I don't know what argument. But, guys, these Zionists have been so livid over Joe Rogan all over X, guys. They've been losing their shit. All right, they're talking about canceling his show. There's all these people pretty much, they're just attacking Joe Rogan left and right, guys. I've seen some I've seen some crazy shit, guys, over this Dave Smith, Douglas Murray debate, right, where Douglas Murray was making a pretty much like an irrational, unreasonable argument that you have to visit Gaza and Israel to speak on the matter. So, you know, I guess this guy was addressing it, but, you know, I don't know, guys. You guys got to let me know, because, you know, they're losing the PR war so bad that now it's become like, now they're desperate, right? Because you can't, it's hard to refute, argue, you know, blatant international war crimes that that many people have already seen, right? And it's hard to argue the facts. So, you know, these guys are usually, good at manipulation and distortion. But now the facts are so evident, it's hard to finagle your way out of being called out on certain things, right? So that's just the reality. And so they have all these paid shills, these like little representatives, these apologists like Douglas Murray, who they pay to lie, but they can't even do that right? He couldn't even lie with a straight face. He had to resort to some irrational, illogical, I don't know. He didn't even know how to respond to Dave Smith. Dave Smith was hitting him with facts. By the way, Dave Smith is a Jew, right? So it's not a foreign topic for him, right?